I want to welcome everyone. Oh, I want to welcome everyone. I'm Stephen Procopio. I'm the president of the Public Affairs Research Council of Louisiana. PAR is a nonprofit, nonpartisan state policy watchdog and research organization. As part of our uh, monthly webinar series, although we started a little late because of this is supposed to be our January one, but the snows pushed us back. We really more enjoyed it than any kind of delay. So we'll actually have two in February. I'll talk about the second one at the end. I want to thank our sponsor. This is fantastic, the Louisiana Independent Pharmacies Association, who represents your local community pharmacies. We're really happy to have them as a sponsor. It's a great organization that we've had a long relationship with. Today, we're going to be talking about insurance reform. Data from the Insurance Research Council, which is supported by insurance companies and the association, shows that Louisiana remains the least affordable state for personal auto and homeowners insurance. That is, Louisiana spend more based on how much income they make. So to talk about that, we have gathered a fantastic panel of experts. We have Insurance Commissioner Tim Temple, Senator Jay Luneau, who is Vice Chairman of the Judiciary A Committee, and that's where tort reform bills are often heard, which definitely intersects this topic, and Representative Gabe Firment, the Chairman of the House Insurance Commission. Thank you all so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. We know y'all have a busy schedule and y'all are gearing up for session. Format. I'm going to start with a few broad questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Melinda, and she'll have a few additional questions, starting to get in a little more detail. However, the most important part is we're going to take questions from our participants. So anyone that's listening, if you want to put your questions into the Q&A or the chat, Melinda will get those. If multiple people ask similar questions, she will summarize it and rephrase it. That's where we want to spend most of our time because that's what makes this webinar interesting. So with that, let's say broadly, we all know we have problems. What do you expect to be your main focus for insurance solutions and reforms in the session that's coming up, the regular session? It's going to be property, auto, any specific changes that you're looking to make? Commissioner, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, good morning, Stephen, and appreciate the opportunity to participate this morning. Look, we're going to continue to bring reform-minded legislation to the legislature. As I mention often, currently Georgia is in their regular session, Texas is in session, Mississippi is currently in their session, Florida is about to go into session, I believe, if not already in session. So states are constantly tweaking and modifying their regulations and their laws with specific regards to insurance to make it more attractive for companies to come and do business there. So Louisiana has to continually monitor the changes that are made in other states so that we can keep up and that we can catch up. So we have a package of bills that we're working on right now. They're early stages, draft form. We've not engaged with all the stakeholders, but we certainly will be engaged with all the stakeholders to get their input on it so that we can continually make Louisiana as an attractive marketplace as possible to bring companies to Louisiana so that you as a consumer have that ultimate consumer protection, which is choice.
Okay, great. Chairman Firment, if you would talk about, are there some particular bills or at least areas that you're focusing on?
Yeah, I certainly think we'll continue addressing the property insurance situation. I do think we made tremendous headway last session when it comes to the property market. But I think from my perspective that the number one priority is going to be looking at what we can do to improve the automobile insurance market. I spoke to a group of students at Gina High School this morning, so I ran over to the courthouse here in LaSalle Parish to do the webinar, and we probably had 6 or 8 LaSalle Parish loggers and truckers and oil and gas contractors at our town hall meeting in Pineville last night. And to attend a meeting like that and hear your constituents who own a logging company say, we're parking 5 trucks and laying off 12 people because we can't afford the insurance. I think that just reflects the gravity of the situation and the severity of the crisis. And it's certainly a crisis on the personal auto side, but it's really catastrophic what the commercial auto market has become, and especially certain sectors. So I think auto reform is going to be the number one priority. But I do think it's important we continue working on the property side as well.
Okay, thank you. Senator Luneau.
So I too believe that we'll be looking at auto more than anything else. I think we all agree that auto insurance rates in Louisiana are much too high, and that we have to do something to try to bring those rates back down to get them to a respectable place. We work together, as others have said, on the property issues. We were able to reach some compromises, and we covered a lot of different areas on that. And I think we did good work and passed some good legislation there. And I'm hopeful that we can look at all of the areas in the auto tort arena as well, and see if we can make some changes there that'll help lower rates for citizens in Louisiana.
Great. Okay, before we dive into some sort of deep questions, there's one issue I want to make sure we talk about. PAR, one of our core issues is transparency. And so I want to talk about this. It seems nationwide, not just Louisiana. It gets difficult to find comparable information on premiums and other aspects about insurance. And just simple things like, how much are premiums? What are the averages? Again, this isn't just Louisiana, and Commissioner Temple is inheriting a system and a website from other people. What would be some of the issues with setting up a portal, a transparency portal at the commissioner for your department to let people know what's happening with premiums, at least on major lines, and then how are you going to address those problems and do it anyway?
Yeah, look, I think I am a big believer in transparency, and I've been in this office a little over a year, and I'm still amazed that not only myself but a lot of people around the state believe that the Department of Insurance has all-seeing power into everything with regards to insurance. And we are the regulatory authority, and we have authority to request information. But I can tell you, the Department of Insurance is a very lean department. We're 222 people. We operate on a budget of right around $39 million. By the way, we collect $1.5 billion in premium tax, and we operate on 39 million of it. So we're a very lean organization. We've made changes internally. I have started requesting additional data from insurance companies so that we can have that transparency and that we can relay that and put it in a format to you, the consumer, to see what the premiums are, what insurance companies are charging, discounts that are available, whether it's on your auto or your homeowners. I mean, there's a lot of information out there, and I've certainly, the legislature last year granted additional authority to the department to request and have more oversight into insurance transactions between managing general agencies and insurance companies. So, I'm appreciative that the legislature has given additional authority, and we're certainly going to use that to bring that transparency that people want. Like I said, I talk to other commissioners of insurance. I look at other insurance websites, other states, and we've picked up some things that I like that other states do. And so the intent, again, is to bring and have that information on a more easily consumable format, for my fellow citizens in Louisiana.
Oh, great. Well, I look forward to that. All right. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Melinda. I'm going to remind everyone, she's got one or two questions that she's going to ask, but start putting your questions into the chat or into the Q&A function is even better. I'll tell you what happens every time is that there's usually a flood of questions that comes in at the end. So the sooner you can get your question in, the more likely it's going to get answered. And we'll oftentimes try to group questions together and try to move through them. So with that, Melinda.
Thanks, Stephen. So I know y'all said that this session is going to be a lot to do with auto insurance, but I do want to touch on property insurance a little bit before we move to auto. And I guess I want to ask sort of a broad question for all three of you, which is there really anything else the state can do to lower property insurance rates, or at least lower the rate of the increases amid the frequency and strength of the disasters that we have here, and the rapid erosion of our protective wetlands, all these problems? I guess I'm just wondering, sort of broadly, is there any place else to go to sort of compress or keep rates in check on the property side? And I'll start with you, Commissioner Temple, but I'd like everybody to weigh in on this one.
Look, when you say lower rates, I think, I don't think you're suggesting government intervention in determining rate setting. Look, I have, since day one, I've maintained that my philosophy is to create a competitive environment that attracts companies to come to Louisiana, that allows companies that are currently in Louisiana to manage their portfolio to be more competitive. And through that competitive process, premiums will moderate and then start to come down. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on my position on that. And look, we made some major reforms last year. As Senator Luneau said, I mean, people were able to come together and compromise on some very important and very controversial bills. But it was designed to attract more competition to Louisiana. And it's going to take time. And I think that's one thing that is as an elected official, part of my job is to set realistic expectations. And I can tell you that, Florida took on major insurance reform over an 18-month period, and they're now beginning to see the fruits of that labor. It took 18 months, 24 months before companies started to go back to Florida because of the reforms that were taking place. And today, their citizens are seeing rate decreases for the first time in years. So, I understand that people are frustrated. They expect that when you pass a law, there's an immediate change. And that's just not a realistic expectation. So, I want your viewers to understand and know that change has been made. It is going to take effect. It is going to be positive, but we didn't get in this crisis overnight. We're not going to get out of this crisis overnight, but we are going to get out of this crisis.
Senator Luneau, do you see any place else you would like the legislature to go in terms of property insurance reform?
So I do, and frankly, it's not just property insurance, it's all lines of insurance in Louisiana. I think that the commissioner needs some more power to do some more regulation. And it's, for example, Louisiana is one of the few states where the commissioner has the power to deem rates too low, but in Louisiana, he has no authority to deem them too high. I think they already have that authority too, and that's something that he should look at. I think that insurance companies should be made to be more transparent and let us know about what their costs are and what their profit levels are. We want them to be profitable. The last thing we want is insurance companies going under. I served on the board at the Louisiana Insurance Guarantee Association for 6 years and dealt with insurance companies that went and became insolvent. And it's very difficult to deal with. So we don't want that to happen. So we need to be able to make sure their finances are strong and they're doing the right thing. We need to know how they determine what their profits are. I know there are a lot of companies that have a lot of extravagant expenses that go into their bottom line, and we need to be able to look at that and have some transparency there. So I would think that we do need to give the commissioner some more authority in many of these areas.
Representative Firment, same question. Are there specific changes you would still like to see on the property insurance front? And what do you think about the idea of giving the commissioner that additional authority?
I think there's a lot we can do with property reforms. I would start with the fortified roof program. I think the key to long-term stability in the property market, especially in South Louisiana, is we have to build more resilient structures. And so, I think we have to incentivize people to put fortified roofs on their homes and commercial properties. I don't think it's feasible for the legislature to continue to fund that program. I think industry needs to contribute. And I think we need to educate the public and show them the value in fortifying their homes. And look, I think there's also a lot of value in data. Like, we need to be tracking how many new roofs we have. Look, of course, I've been a claims adjuster for over 25 years now. There's no comparison to how a new architectural shingle roof, fortified or not, stands up to catastrophic winds compared to an older 3-tab shingle roof. So, but it doesn't matter how many new roofs we have if we can't convey that information to the insurance industry. So I know there's discussions about starting something like a roof registry, just to track how many new roofs we have, how many fortified roofs we have. I'm a big proponent of catastrophe savings accounts. So I think you'll see some form of that legislation introduced this session, similar to health savings accounts, where you can put money, let's say $25,000 in a tax deductible account, set that money aside to cover named storm deductibles, non-covered damages, and things like that. So look, there's a lot we can do. I think we need to remove some ambiguity from the claims handling process and statutes that we have in place. So, no, I think there's a lot of work left to do on the property side.
Well, let me ask you, are you going to be requesting that the state put additional money into the fortified roofs program for people, or where do you see that going?
Yeah, I think that would be a more appropriate question for the commissioner. I'm sure he's got some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Okay, well then,
and
Commissioner,
Melinda,
I'm coming back to you because I want to know both about the fortified roof program, but also about Senator Luneau's suggestion that you need more authority to find rates excessive.
Sure. First on the fortified roof program, I am certainly supportive of that. I'm, if we could go back in time, Alabama's had a program for 12 years in place. Their state now has over 70,000 fortified roofs. That's why we've got to constantly look and see what other states are doing. You can imagine if we had a fortified roof program started 10 years ago, how far ahead of the game we would have been, especially after Laura, Delta, Zeta, and Ida, and all the new roofs going on. Imagine if those had all been fortified roofs. So, we're behind the curve on that. I'm pleased with the progress the department's made. We've actually have, I think, almost 2,000 fortified roofs completed on properties through the grant program. But I think more importantly, we have over 5,000 fortified roofs that people could voluntarily put on their homes as they were building new construction or putting a new roof on. And so I am going to bring legislation or ask for legislation this year to change the funding mechanism for the fortified roof and have the industry have a portion of the taxes that you and I pay on our property insurance that's collected by the state of Louisiana. I'm going to ask for a portion of that to fund the fortified roof program. We're also going to ask to increase the fees on the insurance entities that we license here at the Department of Insurance. An increase on those fees, a slight increase, and have that money dedicated to the fortified roof program so that we don't have to go to the legislature every year and ask for it.
Let me interrupt you on that one, please. Do you have any idea how much that might raise annually for that program?
Well, we're going to target $30 million. And so, and again, we'll take a small portion from each side and have, and look, we've modeled, this isn't something that we just came up with. Alabama, we're looking at their model. They actually increased their fees on those that they license, and that's what funds the Alabama model. Mississippi last year created a fortified roof program in their state, and they're taking tax dollars to fund theirs. So I want to create a hybrid program and have some come from both.
And that would be annually, is your
Annually.
plan? Okay.
Correct.
Okay, and then on Senator Luneau's suggestion about giving you additional authority to find rates excessive, where are you on that idea?
Yeah, well, look, as Commissioner of Insurance, I do have the ability when companies file rate changes that we do review. And if they are excessive, meaning they have to justify what the number is, it has to be actuarially justified. And if it's high and they can't justify that actuarially, then we push back on that and we ask for justification. And we have done that in the past. So while, it might be a little bit of a nuance, what we're talking about as far as what the authority, the commissioner has authority wise, but I'm certainly willing. Look, I respect Senator Luneau's insight into the insurance industry. He's done a lot of work in this industry. As he said, he served on the LIGA board for years. He's got a lot of knowledge with regards to insurance, and I'll certainly look forward to talking with him and understanding more about what they want to give the Department of Insurance. And if it help keep insurance companies in check and bring relief to the consumers, I certainly want to have a conversation.
Okay, so Senator Luneau and Commissioner Temple, I expect you to follow up with each other after this.
We do.
We've got each other's numbers.
We do.
So I'm looking at, thank you to everybody who submitted questions. We have a bunch coming in, so I'm just going to pick and choose some of them. And I'm going to start with this sort of broad question. Is there a tax break or incentive program that the state could do to attract more companies to the state? I know that Commissioner Donnellan did some of that with the legislature supporting it in the previous term. Is that something that is of interest to any of you at this point trying to do? And I'm going to start with Representative Firment just because I'm switching it up.
Yeah, I don't know. And again, the commissioner can probably speak to this better than I can. I don't know if there's any tax incentives. From my perspective, it's all about competition. And to get these companies in and to invest their capital in Louisiana, we need to listen to what they're telling us. And you know what they were telling us when it comes to property is you need to get rid of the 3-year rule. You need to look at a system like file and use for your rate making. So, and on the auto side, they're telling us, you know, you need more transparency in medical billing. We need to do something about nuclear verdicts that are just out of control. So the commissioner certainly talks to more companies than I do, but the conversations I've had with insurance companies, when you ask them what it would take to come back into Louisiana, they're not coming to us with their hand out asking for tax breaks. Look, I'm sure they would take it, and the legislature had a program 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not going to say it was unsuccessful, but it was you know, very limited success, I would say. So I don't think that's the key. I think we understand for the most part what it's going to take, and I think we're going down the path to implement those changes.
Senator Luneau, you're on the Senate's tax committee. Is that something you would be interested in, tax breaks for the insurance industry or some sort of incentive program?
Well, as you know, I'm not a big fan of tax breaks. I've brought a lot of legislation to do away with a lot of those. We have more tax breaks for companies in Louisiana than any other state in the United States, and that's problematic for us. So I'm not a big fan of that. I think there are other things that we can do. I think one of the things we can do is we can quit legislating by sound bites. The term nuclear verdicts was mentioned. It's my understanding that that's kind of defined as verdicts in excess of $10 million. We don't have many of those in Louisiana. It's not like a problem that we need to rush in to address and look at. And typically, when you do see verdicts like that, they're companies suing companies. They're not individuals in car wrecks and things like that to get those verdicts. Those are few and far between in Louisiana. We don't have punitive damages, things like that usually create large awards like that. So instead of doing these little soundbite things like jackpot justice and things like that, let's legitimately talk about the issues and identify those issues, because they're complicated. They're hard to understand sometimes, and they're difficult to find solutions to. So we just have to bear down and really look at these issues and find out what works best.
Commissioner, we have a data related question that I think you're probably the best person to answer if you can. We have somebody asking the average rate of increase for property insurance year over year in the last couple of years. Do you know how much it's been growing annually for the last few years?
Yeah, you know, we've been looking at that, and I want to say that in 2022, I believe it was somewhere around 23%. Maybe not quite 23, somewhere maybe right just shy of 20% average increase. That's come down in this last year, 2024. I can tell you, and I can't give you specifics, but and we can certainly give you the hard data. But the number of rate increases in the last year was less than the prior 2 years. And actually, the number of rate decreases that the department received last year has started to increase from prior years. And so we're trending in the right direction. I think, look, when I talk to consumers and they say that they were able to save money on their homeowners insurance or their auto insurance, it's always associated with they changed insurance carriers. They shopped their insurance. And I know certainly there are certain areas of the state that there's not a lot of market out there. There's only 1 or 2 companies, but that is the most effective and quickest way to get premium relief is to shop your insurance and change your insurance carriers.
Okay. We have a question about essentially about tort reform is what it looks like. It's a question about, is there any legislation plan that will address the TV advertisements of lawyers and things that encourage people to sue over auto accidents and their ability to claim medical costs that, according to this person, may not be proven or justified. I know there's obviously ongoing conversations about changing the litigation rules through tort reform over and over. Senator Luneau, I'm going to start with you. Is there anything that you think should be done to address, you know, lawyer advertising or medical cost claims in this process?
So it's no secret that I'm not a fan of lawyer advertising. I never have been. When I served on the executive committee of the Bar Association, I was involved in writing rules that limited lawyer advertising a lot, and many of those rules were struck down as unconstitutional. I personally think that the U.S. Supreme Court would revisit that if somebody brought that litigation to them. I think they may even revisit that and look at it in a different light, but that's yet to be seen. Lawyers, like everybody else in the United States, have First Amendment rights, and they have the right to advertise. And so we can't take that right away from them, and the courts have ruled that way consistently. Now, as far as the medical end of it, I'll give you an example. If you're in a car wreck and somebody runs into you from behind and you're injured and maybe have a broken limb or something, and the ambulance comes and picks you up, you don't get to pick who the ambulance company is. They don't discuss, would you like to have this procedure done in the ambulance and it costs this much? When you go to the ER, they don't tell you, would you like to have an x-ray that costs X number of dollars or an MRI that costs this much? They just tell you, these are the procedures we're going to do on you, and then you're billed later. And when you're billed on that, that's when the confusion comes in, because they bill you one amount if you're going to pay, and then many insurance companies, health insurance companies, get discounts on those procedures, so the amount is lowered down. But the reason you get those lower discount rates on your health insurance is because you've been paying the premiums for that insurance for many years in most cases. And so that's the collateral source rule that's been changed so many times and discussed again and again and again. But a few years ago, we lowered the amount of collateral source rule by 60%. And we've not seen a penny drop in insurance. In fact, insurance has gone up. And in fact, to go even further, in the last 50 years in the state of Louisiana, we have done tort reform in nearly every legislative session to some degree or another, more in some, less in others. And in that 50 years, tort reform has never lowered insurance rates for automobiles in Louisiana, not a single time. So we still have some room. We can continue to look at tort reform. I don't have a problem with discussing that and debating those issues, but we have to look at other things too. If we keep doing the same thing over and over again, it doesn't work. Shame on us. So we need to look at things, quite honestly, like how much profits automobile insurance companies make in Louisiana, because that's a fair question for consumers to ask, because they're obligated by law to buy these products.
Commissioner, do you want to revisit tort reform again and talk through, medical cost claims and how those are calculated in litigation? Is that something?
Yeah, but first I wanted to just add on to the comment about the advertising attorneys. And look, I'm on the record. I'm not supportive of trying to do away with advertising. I don't believe that. I mean, it's a right. It's been given, and I don't think that we should try and infringe upon that. What I would like to see is more transparency in advertising. We talk about transparency, and I'm a believer in it. All sides, sunshine on everybody. And quite frankly, when you've got advertisers saying that they got $500,000 or $1 million or $250,000, and they're jumping up and down and they're happy and they're dancing on TV, who got the money? If it's $500,000, is it that person? Is that the person that got the money? Or I mean, we have representations of people that of actual claimants. How's the breakdown? Does the $500,000, did it go into the pocket of the claimant? How much did the attorney get? How much of that was medical costs? We need transparency on all of that. So I would love to have conversations with legislators about how do we bring transparency. And look, Senator Luneau is right when he talks about transparency. We need to know where the money is going. I have maintained that if the insurance companies are the ones that are making money hand over fist, writing an auto policy in Louisiana, let's show that. I don't think the numbers would prove that out. And that's part of what we're trying to do, is work with the industry to collect that data and show the information. But it's unfortunate when we have conversations in these hearings and the insurance companies, which are the ones that have the data, it's their information and they present it. And then, opposition always says, well, we can't trust that information because they're the ones that came up with it. Well, it's their data. So, how do we work through that? I don't know. But look, I think Senator Luneau said it, tort reform, and I don't like tort reform. I don't think most people know what tort reform is. I'm not an attorney. Most people in Louisiana, even though we have a lot of attorneys, most people aren't attorneys but we need to talk about some insurance reform, legal reform, medical reform, whatever monkey we want to give it. But we need to truly bring about, have some true conversations. And like Senator Luneau said, we've been fighting this battle in Louisiana for decades and decades and decades. And I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to sit down with the right people. I guess, we haven't had an opportunity to have team Luneau, Firment, and Temple work together on something. And look, I know everybody's heart is in trying to bring relief to the consumers, because their phones ring every day, just like mine does, on people calling to say, I can't afford the insurance premium that's sitting in front of me, that's on my table. And so I'm looking forward to working with them, whether it's tort reform, whatever we want to call it. It doesn't matter to me, but we've got to bring some transparency and show when a citizen of Louisiana writes $1 of premium, how's that being allocated at the insurance company level? And when an insurance company pays $1 out in claims, how is that being allocated? I'm really looking forward to having those conversations.
And I'd like to chime in on this topic and also respond to something that Senator Luneau said earlier. When the CEO of a global insurance carrier tells you they're in every state but in Louisiana because of their exposure to nuclear verdicts, it's not a soundbite. Okay, that's a fact. I mean, we heard last night that there's only 2 insurance companies in the state insuring tow trucks. There's only 1 or 2 insuring log trucks. When insurance companies stop taking your money, we've got an issue, and that's where we're at, especially on commercial auto. And look, if nuclear verdict is not a problem, why are the plaintiff attorneys bragging about it? Go to their websites, go to their social media, see how many $10 million plus verdicts they've got on their websites, that they're that's how they're marketing their services. So it is an issue. It's something we need to address. And look, when it comes to the issue with medical billing, I'm not an attorney, but common sense would seem to say we owe the jury all of the relevant information. Why are we withholding relevant information from juries? Why not give them the billed charges, the incurred charges, and let them hear evidence of what is customary and reasonable? I don't understand why there would be objections to that level of transparency. And quite frankly, I don't know that the public understands that either. So look, maybe I'm missing something, but from my perspective, we need common sense and transparency, and that's a big issue. And I'm certain there will be legislation to address it.
Okay. Commissioner, we have a question about your comments about Florida, and you mentioned that Florida was able to make progress in lowering insurance rates there. Were there any circumstances in Florida that are similar to Louisiana, or that may have made progress easier in Florida than it would here?
Well, one thing is, Florida again they had four special sessions to address not only property reform, but also auto reform in their state. But with regards to Florida, they tackled assignment of benefits, which the Louisiana legislature had handled here in Louisiana, I think back in 2020 or 2021. They ended one-way attorney fees in their state. But I think more importantly, and I just recently came back from a meeting where I had a meeting with a lot of reinsurers that support property business in Louisiana. And one of the things that they were able to demonstrate in Florida is that, the reforms that they had were battle tested, if you will. They had Hurricane Helena. They had Hurricane Milton. And so they were able to actually put into practice the reforms that were passed in Louisiana, in Florida. In Louisiana, we haven't. We did have Hurricane Francine, but it was a relatively mild event. While we did have people that had sustained damage to Francine, it wasn't widespread like it was in Florida. And so the reforms that we put in place haven't been tested yet. That's my conversations. That's quite frankly why I meet with reinsurers, to continue to let them know we did pass them and try to get as much credit as we can today for the reforms that we were passed, because these are things that you may not see until you have a catastrophic event with regards to the property industry. So, like I said, it's going to take time. We've done a lot of the hard work that needs to be done. We still have more to do, but we're going to continue to look. And like I said, Florida's in session. We're going to look and see if they have additional property reform that we might want to look and piggyback on.
I'm going to ask the two legislators from Central Louisiana this question about coastal issues. We have a thread of questions that are asking people about, or people asking about, could we really address property insurance premiums and rates in the state without addressing coastal projects like the Mid-Barrett area, sediment diversion, and climate risk writ large, are the sort of existential questions about Louisiana. So Senator Luneau, and I'm joking because obviously y'all don't live in coastal districts, but how important do you think it is, Senator Luneau, to address climate risk writ large, and these coastal projects, how critical are they to impacting property insurance rates in your mind?
Well, it's obviously something that deserves our attention and our help. We have done a lot of that. We have put a lot of money into the coast to restoration projects and to keep flooding down and those kind of things. But we have to remember approximately half the state of Louisiana is in a flood zone. So it's difficult to deal with those issues. There are a lot of issues that come up as a result of this kind of stuff. For example, there are a lot of people that own second homes or camps, if you will, along the coast that are very expensive and insured. And when storms come, it costs the insurance companies a lot of money to pay those claims. So it's multifaceted and a lot of things you have to look at. The difficulty that I have in a lot of that is that there are other parts of Louisiana that are just as deserving that have issues as well. In 2016, we saw catastrophic flooding across the state. I remember flying across the state, just looking at it just in disbelief. And we still have those issues. I have issues in my district, my senatorial district, just north of Alexandria, where they have flooding on pretty much an annual basis. So we have lots of needs and we have a limited amount of resources to put toward those needs to pay for them. But I think we have an obligation to the citizens to do the very best we can with it.
Representative Firment, same question for you. Is addressing the needs of the coastal master plan and all those coastal projects, is that critical in your mind to property insurance rates?
Well, I'm glad this meeting is being recorded because I want to go on record saying I agree with Senator Luneau and his comments. So no, look, I think we need to continue to invest in the coast. Look, we can't control the weather. I mean, that's just something we have to live with. So we have to be prepared for flooding and for hurricanes and hailstorms. And again, I think it goes back. The biggest thing we can do there is make sure our building codes are stringent, make sure we're incentivizing the fortified program, and we also have to be smart in how we spend our dollars. And like Senator Luneau said, we've got pretty significant needs in our part of the state when it comes to flooding. North Louisiana is very susceptible to hailstorms, so I think we need to start looking at encouraging carriers to offer discounts on shingles that are hail resistant. So there's a lot we can do just from building codes and encouraging people to build more resilient structures. But no, I think in the grand scheme of things, investing in our coast is a part of the bigger picture solution.
Okay, when you're talking about the building code situation, let me ask Commissioner Temple, is that something you think is important to change our building code, our statewide building code, or increase some of the standards, particularly based on where you live? Would that help rates in your mind?
Absolutely. I think that, and we've engaged conversations with the Building Code Council to those efforts. I mean, there are certainly areas in South Louisiana that a fortified roof needs to be the standard. Look, Texas has portions of their coastal communities where if you don't build to the wind mitigation standard, then you can't obtain wind coverage. So as a consumer, you still have choice. You don't have to build to that level, but you're not going to be able to get wind insurance wind cover through the Texas wind pool. So it's done in other states. We need to look at it. In Mississippi, I'm sorry, in Alabama, the 2 coastal counties they have there, the standard is fortified roof. So it's something that we need to start to have the conversation so we can phase it in. It certainly doesn't need to change overnight. So, but as I think Representative Firment and Senator Luneau will acknowledge, fortified roofs in central Louisiana don't make sense. So we need to have these conversations, and if we're able to obtain this dedicated funding for the Louisiana Fortified Roof Program, one of the things I'd like to make a change internally is to allow grants in other parts of the state that, for example, have people in North Louisiana, Central Louisiana, be able to apply for a grant to get a hail-resistant roof, hail-resistant shingles. Make the grant applicable to whatever the local geographic risk is. And let me add this, Melinda. One thing, and we're talking about spending money more wisely. Recently the federal government allocated $1.3 billion to elevate approximately 3,500 homes in Southwest Louisiana. So they're going to elevate these homes so that they don't flood. What they didn't do was take that next step, and out of 1.3 billion, they could have allocated 35 million to fortify every one of those roofs. So they're elevating the home, so it's removing the risk of flood, but they've done nothing to mitigate against the roof, against the risk of flood from above when you lose your shingles. So when I was in DC recently, I had conversations with our congressional delegation members, making them aware of this so that we can change it so that in the future, every time federal dollars are spent in our state to elevate a home, no matter where it is, let's make sure and take that next step and fortify the roof.
And I'm just going to let
one of the issues that we've heard again and again and again is that the roof is so vitally important because when the roof is torn off, the water comes into the home and that causes tremendous damage. So
yes, sir.
We need to allocate some more money to this fortified roof program and look at those things in the future.
And I'm just going to tell you, based on all the questions we have, there's a lot of interest in y'all putting more money into this fortified roof program. That is very clear from what the feedback
Melinda,
we're getting.
We had 300 grants 2 months ago, and we had 11,718 people request a grant for 300 spots. So there's a lot of demand for it.
Right. Is there an average savings that you can share, Commissioner, in terms of if you have a fortified roof? What does that mean on average in terms of lessening your insurance rates?
Sure. We don't have an average for that, but on the website, we now have a database that shows every admitted company what their discount for a fortified roof is. Some of them are single digits. Some of them are substantial double-digit discounts.
Okay. And I'm going to switch to auto insurance a little bit just because I think obviously that's equally as important. We do have some questions about, and this one is what do y'all recommend in terms of when you look at other states and what you've seen other states with lower insurance rates on the car insurance side? What reforms do you recommend that you think would help lower auto insurance rates? And I'm just going to start with Representative Firment. Do you have ideas that you would like to pursue specifically on the auto insurance side?
Yeah, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to identify where we're an outlier and what other states are doing, because the reality is you can drive to Texas or Arkansas and Mississippi and essentially cut your rates in half when it comes to automobile insurance. More than that, your savings would be more than that on commercial policies. So, we've had this series of committee meetings, and the point of those meetings was to identify the underlying cost drivers of auto insurance. And I think we've obtained some really useful information. And for me, the things that stand out is here in Louisiana, when our residents are involved in automobile accidents, we file bodily injury claims twice as frequently as other states. Okay, so we're an outlier there. I don't think our bones are more fragile. So what's going on there? So that's one issue, and the other is when those bodily injury claims are disputed, we're more than twice as likely to litigate to solve those bodily injury claims. So we've got a legal environment that incentivizes people to file claims, people to seek litigation to settle those claims. And So look, I think we've got some solutions. I think the transparency in medical billing is where we start. You know, we don't have a level playing field when it comes to evaluating injuries, and we've got an assumption going into a case that an injury was sustained in the accident. So that's something called the Housley presumption that I'm fairly certain we'll see that legislation again. And you know, we need to look and see where we're an outlier. Perhaps we do something like other states, like Iowa and Tennessee and Mississippi. You know, they've implemented caps on non-economic damages when it comes to automobiles. Other states, we're an outlier when it comes to how we determine fault. We operate under a comparative fault system. I think we're one of 12 states, so perhaps we move to a modified comparative fault system. So look, there's a lot of things we can do, and I just hope we can get to the point to where, you know, we can sit down with Senator Luneau and Commissioner Temple and work all this out and figure out what's going to be the best of comprehensive approach.
Senator Luneau, I'm sure you have thoughts on that as well. Do you think tort reform is the answer in terms of auto insurance, or do you think there are other things that need to be addressed beyond that?
Let me answer that this way. 50 years of tort reform, and we've never lowered automobile insurance rates. I mean, how much longer are we going to continue to concentrate on tort reform to lower insurance rates when we know it hasn't worked for 50 years? And so I don't think that's the answer. I am happy, as always, with any of my colleagues to sit down and talk about it, but we got to be willing to do that before that works. And quite frankly, when we are willing to do that and work with one another, we typically get solutions that work. May not solve all the problems, but they make progress, and that's what I would encourage. I want to talk just about a couple of things that Representative Firment mentioned that I don't think are going to do anything to lower rates because they don't do anything to lower cost of litigation. The Housley presumption he mentioned. I'm a lawyer. I practice law. We don't use the Housley presumption very often, but we do from time to time. It's hard to explain Housley in a soundbite, but basically how it works is if you're driving down the road and you get in an accident that's not your fault, and when the car hits you, when you get out, you have a broken leg. Well, you didn't have a broken leg 5 minutes earlier when you're driving down the street. That's where the Housley presumption comes in. There's a presumption that your broken leg was caused by the wreck. If it happens, it shows up immediately thereafter and continues on in that manner. Otherwise, you have to go take the deposition of an orthopedic surgeon to get their opinion on whether the wreck caused the leg. That's $5,000 to $10,000. That runs up the cost of litigation, and it ultimately has to be paid by the insurance company if they lose on the case. So is there room to modify it? Absolutely. But it's a tool that we use sometimes to keep costs down. Looking at these things like we make claims at 2.5 times greater than other states. I've heard that so many times and I've never seen that data before that shows that. But let's assume that's true. We also have data, and we know that the amount that's paid on claims is about half of what typically is paid in other states. So is that a wash? I don't know the answer to that because we don't know the data. There are so many things that we could do on the other side of the equation, on the insurance side. For example, on various things that insurance companies use to set rates. They use a credit rating. Now, understand, this is not your credit score that you can get from the major companies or lenders and things like that, but they come up with some algorithm, and they do not disclose how that works to anyone, not the commissioner, not the legislature, not the citizens of the state. So we have no idea how that works. We have no idea if it's accurate. We have no right to challenge it and to find out, to get a copy of it and look at it to see if it's accurate. You may be named John Smith, and there are a lot of John Smiths in the state of Louisiana. They may have you mixed up with another John Smith, but you'll never know that because that information is protected. And you might ask, well, how is that so? Because insurance companies in Louisiana can declare that something is proprietary or somehow claim a privilege on that where they don't have to give that information to anyone, and no one can contest it. The consumers can't go to court and contest it. The commissioner can't go to court and contest it. So there are a lot of things that we could do like that would bring transparency, that would help us see exactly what's going on and what we can do to correct it. Just a few years ago, I brought legislation where service people in the state of Louisiana, primarily National Guards people, were being deployed overseas, and they didn't know the correct process they would cancel their insurance. And then when they came back home after a 6-month deployment, they were getting hit with a 25% increase because they hadn't had insurance for 6 months. So I passed legislation to stop that practice. So there are things that we can do that will help, but to continue to concentrate on tort reform that is proved for decades does not work, just doesn't make sense to me.
Commissioner Temple, can you talk through sort of what bills you may be interested in pursuing in the regular session as it relates to auto insurance and whether that includes tort reform? And we've had several questions about whether or not you intend to revisit the bill that Governor Landry vetoed last year.
Yeah, Melinda, look, what we're going to do is we're going to bring common sense reform. That's what we're talking about. Again, when people use, tort reform or legal reform or anything else, temperatures rise. But at the end of the day, we're talking about the citizens and businesses of Louisiana paying some of the highest premiums in the country. Last night, Representative Firment and Senator Luneau heard me speak to a town hall in Pineville. And I've said it before at committee hearings, I said it last night, and I maintain this. There is absolutely no reason that I see why the citizens and businesses of Louisiana are justified paying the highest premiums in America. Our cars are not more expensive. Our broken legs should not be any more expensive to fix in our state than they are in somewhere else. The legal cost shouldn't be any more than they are anywhere else. What drives the premium? And losses drive premium. And yes, Senator Luneau's right. There are other things that factor into it, like profit, like paying commission to agents, like having overhead with buildings and paying taxes. By the way, Louisiana is the second highest premium tax in the country. And I'm looking forward to the legislature supporting lowering the premium tax because that is a direct savings to all of us as consumers if we lower the premium tax. There's a lot of things that we can talk about, but look, this is common sense. And we got to get back to, and I like the word transparency. I've used it, both the senator and the representative have used it today. This is transparency. We, the citizens of Louisiana, deserve to know where the dollars go. And so the legislation, the package of bills we're going to bring, some of that is going to address that. Some of it is going to address, as you asked specifically, to the legislation the governor vetoed. Yes, we're going to revisit that. Again, I'm looking forward to having conversations with all the stakeholders on how we can make that specific legislation work as intended while protect the consumer so that they get their bills paid, but at the same time, not being enriched by recovering more than what was paid out. So this is common sense. And maybe I've been in office not long enough and I'm still naive to believe that common sense needs to be discussed a lot at the Capitol. But I know the two gentlemen on part of this are both honorable and have the best intention of the consumers at heart. And I'm looking forward to bringing a package of bills with their input to bring relief to the consumers.
Okay, I'm going to pivot back to property insurance because we have a ton of questions about property insurance. This is an interesting one. How does the conversation about FEMA nationally and the discussion of perhaps getting rid of FEMA or altering FEMA, how does that play into property insurance rates and homeowners rates here, if at all? And I'm going to start with Commissioner Temple because it seems most likely you would be best equipped to answer this one.
Yeah, look, like we said earlier, I think that the federal government needs to do a much better job of spending dollars more wisely. Typically FEMA comes in because you had a coverage gap. You had people that either didn't have enough insurance or they had no insurance. And so it's up to the federal government to come in and literally bail people out of a bad financial situation. I would rather see that money spent more wisely on the front end toward more fortified programs, more fortified roofs, elevating roofs so that they don't flood, putting fortified roofs on so that they don't flood from above, doing coastal restoration. One of the things that the reinsurance community pays a lot of attention to is the mitigation projects that Louisiana is doing. We have a $50 billion master plan to rebuild marshes and coastal erosion, prevent coastal erosion and rebuild barrier islands. There are companies that put pen to paper and give credit for projects like that. So I would like to see FEMA. I don't know that it needs to go away. I'm not educated enough to have an opinion on that, but I can tell you that I would like to see federal dollars spent more wisely before an event happens to mitigate when we do experience catastrophic events in Louisiana.
I'd like to jump in on a topic we haven't talked about much, but it's important. It's reinsurance, and particularly with catastrophic events. Have we looked at or considering something that could deal with, infrequent but very damaging issues such as hurricanes? Maybe set up some sort of hurricane loss model, something along the lines of Florida has done. And there's been another question about that, maybe pursuing something at the federal level as well.
Look, I don't think Louisiana is a big enough market to create its own reinsurance structure. Look, I'm against the state or even the federal government getting involved in that. I don't believe that's the place of the government to go and create a program to compete with private industry. We may not like the current rate structure because of the number of events that we've experienced in our country and around the globe, but it is still the best market. Free market is still the best system that there is out there. And you would have to do a lot to convince me that the federal government can come in and run a program better than free market. I think NFIP is a dismal failure. Look at Social Security. Show me a government program that runs well, and then we might have a conversation.
So I have a little bit different take on that, in that I believe that the federal government should look at a coastal region reinsurance group for them to purchase reinsurance as a group together. And the reason for that is primarily hurricanes. And, kind of typically, if Florida gets hit a couple of times, we miss, we're better off, and vice versa. Louisiana has more of these storms than anybody else. I think it would behoove us at least to have the conversation to see if there could be some kind of coastal group put together, coastal states group put together that could look at purchasing reinsurance together to spread those losses over the year, so they're not hit so hard each year as storms come into a particular state.
And look, I'll just follow up and say, I guess I sort of agree with Commissioner Temple and Senator Luneau. We don't have much evidence of government entities doing things efficiently and better than the private market, but I think it would be a tremendous undertaking, and we've got a lot of obstacles, but given our position, I think it's worth the conversation at some sort of coastal reinsurance plan. Maybe even you look at the wildfire situation in California, and even the East Coast exposure to tropical storms and all sorts of natural disasters. So, maybe even let's have the conversation to include wildfires and some of these disasters on a nationwide basis. So it's something we need to be talking about, but if it would benefit Louisiana and coastal Louisiana, I think it's a conversation we have to have at least.
All right, I want to thank everyone. I got one more question. Actually, it's a two-parter. So hold on. I want to revisit what can just citizens expect from the regular session coming up, given all the topics we have. And then I want to tie into that. I like to leave on a positive note. What's the one most optimistic thing that keeps you going, that thinks that we can actually fix our insurance crisis? Representative Firment, why don't you go first?
Well, I guess I'm optimistic because of what we saw last night in Pineville at the town hall meeting. We had over 200 people show up, standing room only, and people really, they bared their hearts and they expressed how their families were suffering, how their businesses were suffering. And, I came out of that meeting with the realization that, the status quo is not an option. Failure is not an option. We have to do whatever it takes to bring relief to these people, or the consequences in our communities will be severe. And we're talking about people's jobs and livelihoods and their lives. And look, we don't want to lose any more people from rural Louisiana or from the state as a whole. So this is a problem that has got to be fixed. So I'm optimistic just because of how important this issue is, and I think the public is going to convey that to their representatives.
Thank you, Senator Luneau.
So I'm optimistic because I think as legislators and various officials in the state of Louisiana, we all agree that this automobile crisis has to be addressed and has to be resolved. I'm a little less optimistic, but still somewhat optimistic on the transparency portion of it. And I think that citizens believe that because mandatory insurance is required in Louisiana, that insurance companies should have to be able to provide us with things like that. I know that a lot of people I talk to hear stories about insurance companies that their executives use their own jet planes to fly around all over the country on personal business. They complain about advertising, just like they do about lawyer advertising, about all the advertisements for insurance companies, and if that goes into their premium. So if we make sure that stuff is transparent and people get to make their own decision, that they want to pay for advertising or that they want to pay for other things, then they can make that choice when they pick their insurance company. So I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to do that and work together. I'm less optimistic yet again about bipartisanship in the legislature. It has been a horrible plague on our legislature, and it is only getting worse instead of better. And I hope and I pray every night to God that He will help us with that, and we will get away from the partisan politics and try to address the issues in the state of Louisiana.
Thank you. Commissioner Temple, you got the last word.
Yeah, look, I'm optimistic that we're going to get some substantial reform done to the benefit of the consumers, because insurance is probably, I think it's been more in the spotlight and will be more in the spotlight than it has been in many years. It is the burning issue for everybody in our state, every business in our state. And so I'm optimistic that because of there's the focus by the people on this issue, that we as elected officials will bring about the reform that they deserve. And look, and I'll end with this too. I'm optimistic that the fact that I know, look, Senator Luneau and I, and we agree on some things and we disagree on some things, but I'm optimistic the fact that I know that we can have conversations, meaningful conversations about what's being done. And Senator Luneau is just one representative of all of the folks over there at the legislature. And their phones, everybody's phone is burning down with phone calls about insurance. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to work together to the benefit not of ourselves, but of the citizens of Louisiana, and bring insurance reform.
Thank y'all so much. Look, this is a contentious issue. I know that, but I really respect how much y'all brought light to this topic and did so in a collegial, professional way. I think it's great, and we love that on our webinars. I really appreciate y'all giving your time. A couple other things. Remember, this will be posted on YouTube, so everyone else that missed it will be able to find it. Also, I want to thank our sponsor again, the Independent Pharmacy Association, for supporting your local community pharmacies. February 25th. So because we got pushed back, we will actually have 2 webinars this month. It would be an important one y'all want to watch. It will be reviewing the constitutional amendments that came out of the special session in November. There are several on Article 5 on judiciary, but there's also the rewrite of Article 7, which is one of 14 articles, but it's almost half of the entire Constitution in terms of length. So that is definitely one you're not going to want to miss. We will have our regular crew of people that we talk to our constitutional amendments with. So that's February 25th. Once again, thank y'all so much. I thought this was a great conversation. This is some of the most questions we've ever had, so I really appreciate it. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.